Hello! Welcome to the Singapore portion of Global Agriculture Live 2016. I am your host, Maddie Bright, and I will be telling you today how to make the wonderful dish of kaya toast. The concept of kaya toast was brought to Singapore by Hainanese sailors who had been on British ships. They've been eating the kind of food British people had eaten while on their journey, and so they brought some of that back to Singapore, and that included eating toast with jam. Well, they didn't have Western jams in Singapore. They were very expensive to obtain. So, what people began doing is they would use the kind of food that they'd been eating, a spread called kaya, which was a coconut jam, and they'd put that on their toast. And it's often eaten with egg and dark coffee. This dish is favored by Singapore's elderly because it reminds them of their past. And this dish has been around in Singapore for a good long time, 40 years. That's almost as long as Singapore has been an independent country. This dish is important to Singapore today because it's a remnant of British colonization. It's a reminder of their heritage. And honestly, it must taste good if it's still around. So let's make some.
To make kaya toast, you also have to make the kaya jam, which contains a very unique ingredient, pandan leaves. These leaves are grown in the plantation farming region in Southeast Asia, in countries like Sri Lanka, Singapore, Malaysia, India, and New Guinea. They are pretty cheap. You can get 100 grams for $1. Often, the ones for sale in stores are grown in Malaysia, but there are also farms growing them in Singapore. One example of such a farm is the Green Circle Farm, which grows and sells its own pandan. Pandan from Malaysia is often sold in grocery stores like Cold Storage and Giant Singapore, which is unaffiliated with the Giant stores we have here. Giant Singapore's head office is, predictably, in Singapore. Green Circle Farm's pandan is organic because they don't use chemicals on their plants. They also take other measures, like using compost fertilizer and recycling rainwater to water the crops, to remain sustainable. The price of organic food is generally higher because it produces less food and has a higher labor cost because it does not use chemicals to get rid of weeds or increase yield. Pandan is also grown as a houseplant and requires full sun, and the soil has to have a specific water content. Farmers growing it may have smaller yields in extremely wet or dry years because the soil is unsuitable for the plant, and they must work in the sun to farm it. It also has a limited market outside of Southeastern Asia. When frozen or dried, pandan keeps for a year. If turned into extract, it only lasts for 2 weeks. Pandan isn't a huge cash crop, but with pandan rolls, cakes, and breads on the shelves, you can't deny it isn't popular. As food across the world becomes sweeter, I think we can expect more pandan to be grown in the future. Currently, pandan is mainly used as a sweetener and a food dye. I don't expect that it will diffuse much outside of Southeastern Asia because of the requirement for tropical growth conditions. Also, people keep it in their homes. Maybe because it is useful for cooking, but also has a pleasant scent. It has some medicinal use and antioxidant properties as well. In Malaysia, it is used as a medicinal bath for women after childbirth. There is no denying that pandan isn't important to Southeastern Asia. As I said before, the egg is completely optional.
I'm Jared Diamond, and I fully endorse geographic luck as the primary source of human development.
The Von Thunen model does not apply to Singapore because it imports most of its food.